What's the most ridiculous lie your family forced you to maintain? My parents demanded that I trick everyone into believing we were incredibly wealthy, when in reality we could barely afford groceries, so I had to memorize a list of lies that nearly destroyed my mental health. It all started when my dad lost his job as a big shot executive when they caught him stealing money from the company. Dad had built his entire identity around rich, and he was determined to maintain that image even if it destroyed us. I never got a single toy or book as a present, just designer knockoff clothes because appearance is everything. Some nights there was no food on the table because it was more important that Dad get her another fake Rolex. Every single part of our public existence was a performance. He'd prep me with stories about fake vacations and house renovations to impress our peers and tell me that learning to lie would help me succeed in the business world, just like he had. Never mind that in actuality, my dad had been cashing unemployment checks for the past 2 decades. When I turned 16, my parents sat me down in our rundown kitchen and told me I was transferring to the most expensive private school in our area. My father looked me dead in the eyes and said, "People are starting to ask questions about why a family like ours would send their son to public school, so now you get to prove you deserve the family name." As if our family name was worth anything other than a leaky roof and a stack of unpaid credit card bills. Attending the private school was hell. It meant that every conversation required me to remember which lies I had told to which people about my fake prestigious background. My classmates thought I was a shoo-in at Ivy League universities that had never heard of me, spending summers at vacation homes in countries I could barely pronounce, and dating girls from other prep schools who didn't exist. My parents would quiz me before school events to make sure I could maintain consistency in our fictional lifestyle, and they would punish me for weeks if I accidentally revealed anything that contradicted our carefully constructed image. The breaking point came when my father handed me a fake acceptance letter to Harvard and said, "Just show this around school for a few weeks, then we can say you deferred for a gap year to do charity work in Europe." Rich kids do that kind of thing all the time. I couldn't accept that my parents were willing to forge college acceptance letters to maintain their delusions of grandeur. The next day, I went to my guidance counselor and told her everything, from the fake vacations to the credit card debt to the Harvard letter that my father had created using Photoshop and printer paper. I had been secretly applying to community colleges with my real grades and financial situation, and I told my counselor that I needed help escaping this house of lies before I lost my mind completely. I immediately felt this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I'd forgotten what a relief it was to just tell the truth. But my father refused to accept that I had destroyed years of careful image management with one confession to an administrator. So he convinced the counselor that I was having a mental breakdown caused by academic pressure, telling them that Harvard, Yale, and Princeton were all fighting over me, and the stress had finally gotten to me. Then he pulled me out of school entirely and told me it was so I couldn't ruin anything else, and told everyone else I was being homeschooled while he focused on my mental health. Really, it was just because the checks to the private school were already bouncing. But instead of laying low, he doubled down and started hosting elaborate dinner parties at expensive restaurants he couldn't afford. I inviting wealthy families to discuss business opportunities while I sat there as his fake Harvard-bound trophy son. But he took it too far, and his whole castle of lies came crashing down. He was so desperate to prove our wealth that he accepted a business partnership offer from a parent he met at Harvard Accepted Students Weekend who wanted to invest in his consulting firm. When the investor showed up at our house with contracts and a cashier's check, he discovered that our home office was actually a moldy basement, and that Dad's business existed only on fake letterhead. The investor realized he had been scammed, and word got out fast. Suddenly, our entire social circle learned that the successful executive they had been networking with was actually unemployed and living in a house that was 3 months behind on mortgage payments. The jig was up, and my parents became disgraced recluses. I gained my freedom when the family lies collapsed, and I could finally live as someone who was honestly working class instead of pretending to be wealthy. But I still wake up sometimes in a cold sweat, rehearsed stories running through my head, like I'm trying to impress people in my dreams. Sometimes I catch myself lying about my past, falling back on old habits, and bragging about vacations I never took, and I have to walk myself back, which is embarrassing and has ruined more than one first date. But at least now I have a chance to build relationships based on something real. I just need to get used to that.